Hey everyone, it is Steven here, and right now I am stuck in a massive thunderstorm in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, but luckily I've got a comfortable Airbnb, I have my laptop with me, and a strong Wi-Fi connection, so I thought, heck, why not record a podcast episode on a topic that's probably quite a bit overdue. So we've talked a lot about how to maximize your impressions, how to get quality impressions, how to improve your conversion rates, as well as how to structure your campaigns and manage your bids. But one thing that we haven't talked a lot about is how do you actually optimize your click-through rate, or your CTR. So that's what this episode's going to be about. Now, many of you know this already, but your click-through rate is your total clicks divided by your total impressions. And so one thing that I want to highlight there is the base number there is impressions. And so click-through rate is really an indicator of the first impression of your product. How appealing is your product offering? How enticing is it to the customer? The higher the click-through rate means you have a better product offer that's drawing more attention. Another thing that click-through rate is a strong indicator of is your ad relevance and your ad placement. So we're going to talk about all those things, but first I want to talk a little bit more about why does click-through rate even matter. So click-through rate is important because first and foremost, a higher click-through rate means that you're going to have more opportunity for sales. The more people that click on your product, the more potential sales you can get. You're drawing more traffic to your listing. So a low click-through rate means that either your product offering isn't compelling to the shopper or it's not relevant to what they're looking for. In the case of the latter, a search term report can really help you out here. So if you download a search term report and you find that you've got some search terms with less than, say, 0.2% click-through rate, those search terms are likely going to be irrelevant, and they're actually really good negative keyword candidates that will help increase your overall click-through rate, which can in turn help your ad to rank better on the page. You also want to keep in mind that those search terms with low CTR are still getting clicks, and therefore still driving up spend, and chances are they're not actually getting you very many conversions as well, so they're really just wasting money. Let me give you a quick example here. Maybe you're selling a deodorant, but your auto campaign keeps on getting you clicks for searches like cologne or perfume. Now, chances are that those search terms have a pretty bad click-through rate because shoppers know that they're not looking for deodorant, but they're probably still sometimes getting clicks, which means you're probably just wasting money on it. And those search terms with the low click-through rates should be blocked out to make sure that your ad is actually relevant to the customers. You also don't want to assume that a high click-through rate is a relevant search because sometimes the data could just be low confidence, meaning you got one impression and one click, and that's a 100% click-through rate. You want to make sure that you're looking at filters with at least 200 impressions on your search terms when evaluating what's a good click-through rate and a bad click-through rate in your search term report. One final thing I want to point out is the correlation between click-through rate and conversion rate, and when sometimes a product with a higher conversion rate shouldn't be the product that you're advertising. So here's the example. Imagine you've got two items. One is a smaller volume product selling at 12 ounces, and the larger one is selling at 24 ounces. And let's just say that those are priced at $10 and $18 respectively. Now the 12 ounce product might have a higher click-through rate because it's listed at a competitive price. But the $18 product might have the highest conversion rate because it has the most bang for its buck. And so the strategy here, again, assuming that these two products are on the same product page, they're just listed as variations of each other, you would want to run an advertised product report, find the product variation with the highest click-through rate with the best first impression, and then you want to focus on advertising that one, and then once people click on your ad, then they can upgrade to the larger size that has the higher conversion rate later. But it's the most important to really push the spending on the product with the best first impression or the highest click-through rate. So now let's talk a little bit more about what actually impacts click-through rate. So click-through rate is largely impacted by basically everything that the shopper sees on first glance, such as the image, the title, the price, the number of reviews, as well as the average review score. Is it FBA? Is it FBM? The ad placement, where is the ad appearing? And also badges such as the bestseller badge or Amazon's Choice badge. So let's talk about these things really quickly. First of all, the image is obviously going to be the most important thing. Your very, very first image on the product listing is what the customer sees, and so you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. They have a high quality image that's not crowded, that has, really good detail, that shows the product exactly for what it is, so the customer has no question in mind about what they're looking at. The title now is largely sometimes underestimated for how valuable this is. So I would suggest this. A lot of people, when they're picking their title, they pick things that are important to them. They pick their brands. They use their own jargon. But you have to really be targeting your audience. You want to understand the audience. You want to use their jargon. So if you're selling laptops, people don't care about how many gigahertz or how many gigabytes of RAM. They're looking for something like 13-inch LED screen. So you want to take the most important search terms, the most important keywords, and you want to pump those into your title, lead it at the beginning of your title, especially if you don't really have that brand recognition and people aren't searching for your brand. You want to lead with those most important keywords in your title. Copywriting 101 is to use the customer's language in your advertising. So another thing you would want to do is read your reviews, read your competitors' reviews, read your audience. Find out what people like, find out what people want, and include that in your title. I said this before, but I'll say it again. You shouldn't really worry about putting your brand in your title. If your keywords are branded, they will find you. And if they're not branded, people will be more likely to click on your ad when you lead with an important keyword. Now, the number of reviews and your average review score, I don't think I need to spend too much time on that. That should be obvious, as well as, if something is Prime eligible, people are going to gravitate towards that. And so that's obviously going to give a big boost to your click-through rate. So let's talk more about price now. Now, with price considerations, there's a few different strategies that you can go for. Now, you could have a cheaper price and people see, more bang for buck at a cheap price, and so that could, improve your click-through rate. Or if it's a very expensive product, that sometimes draws attention. It makes people think, what's different about this product? Why is it so expensive? And there's a perceived value in it being expensive. So you'll kind of want to test around with that, maybe even find a middle ground if possible between those two, for where your click-through rate will be the best. Unless if your branding dictates otherwise, sometimes there are brands that they have to, keep up a very expensive or a very cheap price because that's what people who are familiar with the brand expect from them. But you'll want to play around and find out which one gets you the best click-through rates. One quick important consideration for sponsored brands is that price isn't listed in sponsored brand ads. So that might be a good way to experiment as well with more expensive products that would otherwise have a low click-through rate on the normal search page because the price tag is kind of intimidating, but it could be really good in sponsored brands because people don't see the price until they land on the page, and at that time they're already lower down the funnel, they see more images, they can engage with your product. So just one important consideration there. Now, next I want to talk about ad placement. Now this is huge for your average click-through rate calculations. So we've said in the past that the average click-through rate on Amazon is about 0.36%, but that includes all ad placements, which the majority of those ads tend to be on product pages. So I'm going to do an example right now. I'm going to do a search for gummy vitamins. Now, when I'm taken to the search results page, I immediately see 4 ads on my screen. 3 of those are sponsored products, and 1 of those is a sponsored brand ad. Now, if I continue to scroll through just this first page of the results, I will find 8 more sponsored product ads throughout this page. That means we've got a total of 12 ads on this search page. Okay, now I found a product I might like, so I'm going to click on it, and when I'm taken to the product details page, here, if I scroll down just a little bit, I see 2 different revolving carousels just jam-packed with ads. 13 on each carousel. So that is instantly 26 sponsored product ads on the product details page. Now, if I scroll down further on the product details page, I'll eventually find a 3rd carousel with another 13 ads. That's 39 sponsored products ads on this product page, and that's before we even start revolving the ads in the carousel. So you can see this really racks up the impression count quite quickly on product pages, which is why the average click-through rate of 0.36% seems so low. So if you do have a campaign open and you're checking out the placement settings, you may notice that for product pages, you can probably expect a click-through rate of somewhere between 0.2 to 0.4%. For rest of search, click-through rate tends to be about 0.5 to maybe 1%. For top of search, click-through rate is usually about 2 to 5%. That's right, it's about 10 times better than product pages and rest of search. One important thing to keep in mind is that over 60% of all clicks to Amazon on Amazon are attributed to the top of search results page. In fact, we actually have one campaign running right now that is only targeting the top of search hyper aggressively with just a handful of important and competitive keywords. And right now that campaign has a click-through rate of 18% and a 25% conversion rate. Now it does help that this product happens to have Amazon's Choice badge and a $2 off coupon, and that brings me to my next point, badges. So the different types of badges that you can throw onto your product are the bestseller badge, Amazon's Choice. You can also throw on coupons or the deal of the day. But just a couple quick things to note here. The bestseller badge is a category-based badge, meaning in your category, if you have the highest number of sales, and running ads and running coupons can help generate that sales. If you climb to number 1 in your category, then you will get the bestseller badge. Amazon's Choice badge, on the other hand, is a search term based badge. So you want to have a strong conversion rate for that search term. You want to have good reviews. You want to have competitive pricing. Make sure that your product is in stock and Prime eligible, and you'll have a shot at winning Amazon's Choice badge. For coupons, in a previous episode, we talked about this, but they can really, really help with your click-through rate because first of all, they sort of beautify your first impression. They have that bright green color to it. They draw attention to it, and they are visible on all sponsored product and sponsored display ads. But the coupons do not show on sponsored brand ads. So just one thing to note there, running those coupons will help your click-through rate on display ads, on sponsored product ads, but not so much sponsored brands. The deal of the day can also really give you a boost. Of course, it only runs for one day, but it's very attention grabbing. It's red, it's in bold, there's a countdown timer. So that can also really help with your click-through rate, and it can kind of just give your product a boost in the long run. One final thing I want to point out is times when a high click-through rate is bad. So having a high click-through rate isn't always a good thing, because you're still paying out of pocket for every single click. So we talked about this previously, but sometimes there can be some bad or irrelevant keywords that are still getting a high click-through rate. So let me just give you a quick example. Say you're selling a protein powder, but somehow you're accidentally bidding on dog protein powder. Maybe you accidentally picked up that keyword in your keyword research, or maybe an auto campaign's picking it up, or your phrase match on protein powder's picking it up. And maybe when people come to your product, they like your product, they like the images, the price, the reviews, and they think that it's a dog protein powder, and so a lot of people are clicking on it. So you can be getting a really high click-through rate, but maybe people just aren't buying it. So you just want to keep an eye out for that as well, because having a high CTR isn't always a good thing if the keywords or the search terms are either irrelevant or unaffordable. Maybe you can have a really, really high click-through rate at the top of search with 18% click-through rate, but maybe it just doesn't make sense because it's too expensive. Maybe the CPCs are just too much and it's unaffordable and out of your budget. So just want to keep that in mind, that having the highest click-through rate possible isn't always the most perfect strategy, but you do want to get it as high as you can, assuming that the traffic that you're generating is relevant and affordable. Well, it looks like the rain is letting up, so I'm going to go outside, explore the beautiful Amazon, and hopefully I will see you guys in the Badger Den.
Hey everybody, it's Mike here. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. And as some of you may already know, the podcast isn't all that we do when it comes to Amazon. We actually spend the majority of our day working on building the best Amazon advertising tool we possibly can to help automate a lot of the concepts that we discuss during the show.
Yep, and we appreciate you as listeners. We'd love your feedback about our app. And if you're interested in giving our free trial a shot, just head on over to adbadger.com/podcast deal. That's adbadger.com/podcast deal. Thank you so much for the support, guys. We really do appreciate you, and we'll see you next episode.